The economic risk of the lockdown. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I've got my morning stein of coffee and I thought we'd have a look at this article from news.com.au written by economist Jason Murphy. In it he discusses the risk of the lockdown, particularly the second lockdown in Victoria. How will a second wave affect the economy? We'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see how it grows in Victoria. This is going to have some economic impacts. We've just seen the number of interventions the government has had to do to prop everything up. Job seeker bonus. Job keeper. Could you ever have imagined that a conservative government, apparently, would be subsidizing every business in the country? And now we have bank mortgage holidays. The more I learn about the banking industry, the less surprised I am that they would be doing whatever they can to keep people in their mortgage traps. But would you have expected that as well? So we'll have to see, everyone. I think the narrative of a V-shaped recovery is slowly disappearing from the media, or at least it's not being considered as widely as it once was. Or maybe people are just starting to realize what's happening. So let's have a look. So, as the state braces for tough lockdowns, a new chart from ANZ shows the devastating economic impact of a second wave of the pandemic. And here's the new chart. Shows Victoria's economy is underperforming. And what's it going to do to consumer confidence? We've got viewers who are saying they can't even leave their houses now, who live in these lockdown areas. And it depends on what part of the street you're in. Now, these methods have all been put in place to manage the pandemic and reduce the risk of infection. And really to manage the burden on our health system. But there are other consequences to it. There are other health impacts to it. Some of them are positive, and some of them are negative. Flu deaths are down significantly. People just aren't getting out as much. Traffic, all other, aspects of mortality are down, but others are up. Others are up. The risk is when people are, isolated. What can that happen? What can that cause there? One thing we all need to be aware of is just to reach out to your friends. Reach out to people you know. A phone call and a chat just to see how they're going, particularly if they're in one of these harder areas. Australia has moved heaven and earth to get the economy up from its pandemic slump. I think we've only just begun. We've endured incredibly tough lockdowns. The government has unleashed unprecedented multi-billion-dollar spending programs. We've been through complete upheaval, and it has worked. The virus is down and the economy is up. But now a new chart shows just how fragile the economic recovery is. Victoria's new outbreak shows that just a handful of cases can spiral out of control and suppress the spending that keeps the economy moving. That's the problem. It's artificially stimulated. How much of this spending is increased money supply, which is inflation. I know that's not the popular definition of it, but there you go. Health risks and lockdown conditions in Victoria are delaying the spending recovery, said ANZ economist Adelaide Timbrell. Ms. Timbrell shared the following chart, which shows Victorian spending has shrunk. Well, of course it's shrunk, because how many people are at home? There's only so much toilet paper that can prop up the economy. Who would have thought that's one of the 4 pillars of Australia's economy? Toilet paper purchases. At least some of it's made here in Australia. That's something to be happy with. The chart uses ANZ data and reveals that in the rest of Australia, spending is still higher in 2020 than 2019. In Victoria, that was also true until the most recent week. Now, with the pandemic once again tearing through the lungs of hundreds of Victorian citizens and the state responding with tough lockdowns, it is shrinking again. So you can see here. Well, I can't say I'm too surprised. It's going to put a dent in consumer confidence. People are going to be worried. They're not going to want to risk getting ill, so they won't go out and shop. Or they'll find other ways. And the longer this goes on, the longer our habits will change. the longer our habits will change. Maybe some people, I'm hoping some people will get better habits out of this. That they'll realize, you know what, I don't need to buy that lunch all the time. Eating at home is a lot cheaper. I'm saving money. How many people are better off? You know, maybe they weren't earning that much. Now they're getting a JobKeeper. And maybe they've taken a pay cut, but they're not incurring all these other costs. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Apparently, some businesses, some lingerie businesses, are recording huge increases in sales. Will we have a baby boom? Will we have a baby boom? I would rather we have a baby boom than a huge spike in IPV cases and divorces. The chart shows the recent fall in spending is not nearly as large as the fall in March and April. Neither is it as large as the fall in late December caused by the bushfires. But it is a worrying sign of how rapidly progress of the economy follows the virus. Well, that's the thing. It just shows you how it's all artificially propped up. It's not natural. They're just pumping everything they can into it. We'll look at another article later today about even more stimulus for housing. If Victoria is unable to get on top of the virus, its economy is at risk. For now, as the next graph shows, the state can still claim its unemployment rate looks better than other states. So here we have the Victorian unemployment rate is at 6.9%. ACT, funny that how ACT has got the lowest unemployment rate. Queensland, we're at 7.9, WA 8.1. Well, I'd say Queensland, we're going to cop it because we're such a tourist-dependent state. And remember, this is ABS data. Double it to get probably a more... the rule of thumb is double it to get the more accurate reading of what unemployment is. The state government is working hard to suppress the virus outbreaks, bringing in tough new rules. Instead of locking down the whole state or even the whole city of Melbourne, the lockdowns are focused on postcodes that have seen a high number of virus cases. Could this be why people are refusing to get tested? Because they don't want to get locked down. Could this be why? The new lockdowns are designed to keep as much of the economy unaffected as possible. Most of the state continue to operate as normal, working, shopping, and travelling around. One of the interesting things I read in another article discussing these lockdowns, where people are going, oh, you know, my business is just open again. It's terrific, but you can't really fight the government. You know, it's just such a complacent attitude. And here, I mean, there's the one thing. You got the young people protesting about, you know, I don't know, animal cruelty or all these other things. But at least they are active. At least they are being politically active. You know, the concern is that they've been led down a more left-wing socialist path, and that journey really doesn't end well. Not an individualistic, individual liberty path, but still, at least they've become politically active. At least they're not just rolling over and going, "Oh, well, you can't quite fight the government." Or is that just the Australian way? A lot of people are very politically apathetic here in Australia. Will this wake people up? Will they start to realise, you know what? No, I'm gonna dissent to this. So I'm gonna argue this. But will this work? One risk is it might not contain the virus properly. Viruses don't respect postcode boundaries, and it may have already spread beyond the areas in lockdown. The other risk is that all Victorians react to the news of the viral spread and new lockdowns by reducing spending, even if the lockdowns don't apply to them. Well, yeah, it probably will. It probably will. We're on a knife edge right now with confidence. The second wave in Victoria's viral cases has come as the thermometer drops. Temperatures in Melbourne have been frosty in recent weeks, with minimums as low as 2 degrees Celsius. I actually grew up in Coldstream, out near Hillsville, out of Melbourne. And I remember it actually snowed there a few times in my childhood. It actually snowed there. It was that bloody cold. So, of course, who are these Victorians that moved up to Queensland? We'd used to holiday here 2 or 3 times a year just because of the weather. And now I've become so soft, like 10 degrees makes me feel cold. Or it's also I've gotten older and I've got no hair on top. You'd be amazed how much difference just shaving your head makes. You'd be amazed. So, this raises the question with global relevance. Will Asia, Europe, and North America also see an upsurge in cases when winter returns? Winter weather is not the only factor making the virus spread, but it makes suppression harder. It may be that the virus lasts longer than the cold air, and low temperatures encourage people to huddle inside where transmission is more likely. And that's, an interesting take, because some arguments are saying that outdoor transmission is a lot harder. Increased vitamin D exposure is good for you and helps provide other health benefits that make people more resistant to this illness. And just with the Australian lifestyle, a lot of us were outdoors much more than other parts of the world, particularly in summer, particularly in Queensland and the subtropical parts of the country. Take population with a few residential infections, add some cold weather, and virus spread can take off. The first wave of viral outbreaks happened in cold places, Wuhan, northern Italy, and New York in midwinter. Victoria's uptick in cases could be a lesson for the world. Lockdowns work tremendously in summer, but they need to be extremely strict in cold weather to get the same effect. If this is the case, the current success in suppressing the virus in the northern hemisphere might be partially because of summer. 90% of the world's population lives in the northern hemisphere, and they could be facing a second wave by December. If so, this has the potentially disastrous implications for the global economy. The IMF has forecast that the global economy would be 4.9% smaller in 2021 if there was a second outbreak. If the seasonal theory is correct, Australia's summer could bring a reduction in virus cases, but also a steady stream of bad news from the rest of the world. A weaker global economy is bad news for our economy. It would make unemployment higher than it would otherwise be, lock in weaker wage growth for at least another year. And Jason's right there. I mean, our economy is dependent on exports, on tourism, on international education, on migration to help prop up our property prices. All of these things have an influence on Australia. And this is the interesting theory. I mean, is this illness going to be with us for a prolonged period of time? Are we just experiencing the beginnings of humanity getting herd immunity to a virus? We'll have to wait and see. And what are the economic impacts of this going to be? I don't think any predictions of a fast V-shaped recovery are sensible. I think this is going to be a long, drawn-out process. And it has to be managed. I feel sorry for the people in Victoria who are stuck in a lockdown again. I feel sorry for the people that are, completely alone, maybe even just forced to stay in a tiny little apartment. The one thing we can all do is just to reach out to people, even just to communicate to friends, people you haven't spoken to in a while, maybe just to hear a voice. Can't hurt. And you never know, maybe just what they need on that day. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think. Do you think, we'll bounce back? It'll be a tremendous recovery and property will once again be king, as always. Do you think we'll get reforms here in Australia to industrial relations, to our economy? Do you think there's political will to do something brave and new? Or will it just be the same old, same old? Do you think people will become politically activated? Or will the apathy in Australia just continue? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please share, like, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content, there are a few ways you can. You can simply interact with the channel. It helps the YouTube algorithm know that people are watching the content and spreads the videos. You can also support us financially by joining the channel on YouTube or Patreon, using our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin, buying our merch from HeiseSays or the Teespring store, using Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, and supporting us via PayPal. Thanks everyone, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.